All right, so Acts chapter 10. We're going to look at, do you want to read first, Marshall?
I would like me to? I don't mind.
Okay.
Yeah?
The first 10 verses.
Okay. Now there was a certain man in Caesarea, Cornelius by name, the centurion of what was called the Italian regiment, a devout man and one who feared Yah with all his house, who gave gifts to the needy generously to the people, and always prayed to Yah. At about the 9th hour of the day, he clearly saw in a vision an angel of Yah coming to him and saying to him, Cornelius. He fastening his eyes on him and being frightened, said, What is it, Lord? He said to him, Your prayers and your gifts to the needy have gone up for a memorial before Yah. Now send men to Yafo and get Shimon, who is surnamed Rock. He lodges with one Shimon, a tanner, whose house is by the seaside. When the angel who spoke to him had departed, Cornelius called two of his household servants, and a devout soldier of those who waited on him continually. Having explained everything to them, he sent them to Yafo. Now on the next day, as they were on their journey and got close to the city, Rock went up on the housetop to pray about noon. He became hungry and desired to eat, but while they were preparing, he fell into a trance.
Is there something that you want to point out before we go through each one?
Yeah, I just love how it clearly says that the centurion Cornelius, he's a Roman who feared Yah. So that later on he's going to explain how Yah has no respect for persons, and later on he goes on I don't know if there's a thing with the 9th hour and noon. What would be the 9th hour? When it says about
the 9th hour would be around 3 p.m. Yeah, that's the evening sacrifice hour. That's the 3 p.m. Yeah. Where's that at? You see that
verse 3.
Verse 3, yeah. The 9th hour, the time of the evening sacrifice. And you see this, and look at this interesting dynamic. Because look at verse 4, right? It says, verse 2. I like that you mentioned that there's no respect of persons. Let me say that first, because this man is clearly a Roman. His name, Cornelius, that's a Latin name. He's a centurion, which is a Roman soldier. A band called the Italian. He was like perhaps a group in Italy area. Yeah, so this is clearly a man of Yah outside of the bloodline of the Hebrews, you know.
Yes.
But look at what he's doing. A devout man, one that feared Elohim with all his house. Like he taught his family. You know, it wasn't just him doing these things. Like he brought his all his house also feared Elohim as well. And then he says that he gave much alms to people, and he prayed to El always. Always. And look at how Yah refers to those prayers in verse 4. In verse 4, he refers to those prayers. It says, and when he looked on him, he was afraid and said, what is it, master? So he's talking to the messenger. And he said to him, your prayers and your alms are come up for a memorial before Elohim. This statement here. What's going on, Mike? We're looking at the first 10 verses of Acts chapter 10. So, do you see here, Shalom, brother? I think he's frozen now. So I'm gonna look for a cross reference. Give me 1 second.
What verse did you guys stop at?
Acts 10.
We stopped at verse 10.
I'm sorry?
And we're on
What
4.
verse? Verse 4?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Look at Leviticus chapter 2, verse 9, right? Leviticus chapter 2, verse 9. Well, it says, and the priest shall take from the bread offering or the wheat grain offering a memorial, and shall burn it upon the altar. And it is an offering made by fire, a sweet fragrance unto Yahuah. And I believe that another time it mentions it is in verse 16, where it says, and the priest shall burn the memorial of it, part of beaten wheat thereof, and part of oil thereof, with all frankincense. It is an offering made by fire unto Yahuah. So the interesting thing is that certain grain offerings and certain burnt offerings were actually referred to as memorials, and we see a correlation. In verse 4 of Acts chapter 10, it says that your prayers and your good deeds, your prayers and your alms are come up for a memorial. So he's saying that they're coming up like these are sacrifices. Can you guys see that?
Yeah, I see it.
So it's interesting. One, not only is this man not a bloodline relative of the Hebrews, but he's a Roman and he believed in Yah, and his prayers that he prayed always, him in his house, according to verse 2, are as a memorial or as an offering to Yah.
So he's a sweet smelling Roman.
Right. So, come on, man. So it's true. We just read that it went up as a sweet fragrance before Elohim. So I love the fact that just confirmation, even at this time, when people are still between offering sacrifices, believing in Yahusha, people are in between these ways of demonstrating their belief. You have this Gentile or this person of the nations who is now being brought in, and even his offerings, his prayers are being accepted by Yah. What's going on, Dom? We're looking at Acts chapter 10. We read the first 10 verses. And yeah, so Marshall read it. Marshall, is there anything else you wanted to point out? Yeah, he was leaving his job. Does anybody else want to point out anything from the first 10 verses?
Oh yeah,
Acts chapter
brother,
10.
I was talking, but I was on mute. Sorry.
Oh, you was on. All right. Yeah.
Just that same verse. You remember when Mashiach said that store your treasures in the heavens, don't store your treasure in the earth. And when you store your treasure in the heavens, as your prayers and your works or your gifts to the needy or whatever sort of the Lord will lead you to do will be a memorial before Yah. Like then you are storing your treasures in the heavens.
Right, absolutely. And I know that as a memorial, there's many times where he reminds us that he's not going to forget our labors. I think he even mentioned that in Revelation, where he says, I have not forgotten your labor, your patience, and I have not forgotten those things. So, the things that we do, if we're walking in righteousness, are established as things that are either written in the book, or attributed to us, a man of this righteousness, a man of obedience. So the things that are coming up, he's remembering, memorial. He's keeping it in mind about you. You know, that's why in Ezekiel, I believe it's Ezekiel 18 or Ezekiel chapter 3, where it says that if we turn from our righteousness, it says that our righteousness will no longer be remembered. You know, but if
Yes.
we turn from our wickedness, it says that our wickedness will no longer be remembered also. So we see here that his righteousness is being remembered before Elohim. All right, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I just want to point out too, this isn't anything like, spiritually explosive or nothing, but just context, because I think this chapter and the next two chapters are completely taken out of context with a lot of people. So focusing on context is something that's always slipped. I just caught this. This has always slipped my attention. In verse, we'll say 10. Well, 9 and 10. On the morrow, as they went on their journey and draw nigh unto the city, Peter went up upon the housetop to pray, and about the 6th hour, and he became very hungry, and would have eaten, but while they made ready, he fell into a trance. So even keeping it in context, he was dreaming about eating animals. The man was hungry when he went to sleep. So it's not a, so context of why Yah used animals. I mean, he uses your experiences. He uses what we go through to give us understanding of things. This is what he did. This is what he constantly did with the disciples, talking about fishers of men. He uses agricultural references and stuff like that because that's their personal experiences. Peter's personal experience at this moment was he was hungry, and it says he would have eaten, but he fell asleep. So the state he was in, what he was experiencing was hunger. So I mean, it's just not too far fetched to believe that's why y'all gave him the vision about animals.
No, true. It could have been even a test a little bit, to see. Yah does a lot of multiple things. Sometimes when he does one thing, it's supposed to affect multiple different things in our life. So, well, trance is not the same as sleep, by the way. Just making that clear. Trance is like he's kind of left. Like he left. He's on a different type of plane. It's kind of like when Ezekiel was kind of pulled by his lock to like the third heaven. Something like that. Like he's not physically doing this, but it's like he's in a vision. But that makes sense. That makes sense that this will be a moment to teach him using those specific things, and then the things that he says. Well, we're gonna get there because it's in the next few verses, and then the things that he said, talking about eating as well. Like he's talking to Peter about eating when he's hungry. You see what I'm saying? So it's definitely not far-fetched to correlate the two as to why he would, bring this to light in that experience. I think a lot of times, even I'm gonna speak personally. Sometimes there'll be certain situations that I'm in, and then Yah uses it a certain way, and then later on I'm like, oh snap, that's why he put those things together so I could see this, or so I could see this a certain way. And I think that's the wisdom of Yah. That's the wisdom that he has, because he knows where our minds will go. That's a good one. And it mentions the 6th hour where he's praying. 6th hour is about when the sun is directly above us, or most people will say noon. And I like that it mentioned that at the 6th hour, and it mentioned that the prayers of Cornelius in verse 3, that he received a vision in the 9th hour. That was during the time of the evening sacrifice. I like to see that Yah, even after the Messiah's death, is still using his time of worship, his times of prayer and worship. I did a study about the morning and evening sacrifice and said how we ought to continue that, to honor that time and to give him prayer and praise and honor and worship and things like that. So pretty interesting. All right, so let's see. So he's now in a trance. He's very hungry. He would have eaten, but he fell into a trance. And now we're gonna read the next 10 verses. Anybody want to read the next 10 verses, verse 11 to 20? Anybody? All right, Marshall, go ahead, brother.
He saw heaven open and a certain container descending to him, like a great sheet let down by four corners on the earth, in which were all kinds of four-footed animals of the earth, wild animals, reptiles, and birds of the sky. A voice came to him, "Rise, rock, kill and eat." But Rock said, "Not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean." A voice came to him again the second time, "What Yah has cleansed, you must not call unclean." This was done 3 times, and immediately the vessel was received up into heaven. Now Rock was very perplexed in himself what the vision which he had seen might mean. Behold, the men who were sent by Cornelius, having made an inquiry for Shimon's house, stood before the gate and called and asked whether Shimon, who was surnamed Rock, was lodging there. While Rock was pondering the vision, the Spirit said to him, "Behold, 3 men seek you. But arise, go down and go with them, doubting nothing, for I have sent them."
Nice. You have anything you want to pull out first?
No, I just want the Holy Spirit to speak to us like this.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah, no, I understand.
That's kind of like...
Let's see. Anybody else feel like there's something is coming out, like the Ruach is bringing out anything? Or emphasis on anything? So let's start from the top. It says the skies, Shamayim opened, and the vessel came down, a great sheet. It came down to earth from the sky. Just trying to picture this, trying to picture in our minds what Peter's picturing. And then a voice came to him saying, "Rise, Peter." Well, first it says, "All manner of 4-footed beasts on the earth, and wild beasts and creeping things and fowls of the air." All manner. So it's interesting, it's not only referring to unclean animals. Let's see. All manner. Yep, all. But think about it. See a calf alongside a pig or a camel, you know, and then you hear the voice saying, "Rise, kill and eat," you know. It's going to stir up that question, you know. Verse 14, it says, "But Peter said, 'Not so, Master. I've never eaten anything that is common or unclean." That is common or unclean. I want to dissect a little bit things that I haven't really paid attention to. I'm feeling like I'm paying attention to words that I didn't see before. One, I didn't pay attention to the fact that it was all manner of animals, both clean and unclean. 2, I believe there's a specific distinction that he's bringing in verse 14. I'm not going to say that I know specifically what it is, but he said, "I have never eaten in anything that is common or unclean. Obviously, we know that the unclean, based off of Leviticus, I believe Leviticus 11, and the common aspect is defiled. See, unclean animals is not necessarily defiled because they have a function. Yah made them that way. You see what I'm saying? So they're not defiled, but common. The word common means profane, defiled. So what do you guys think about that so far? Let me let Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. So I was gonna say something initially, but I'm gonna wait until we read a little more before I say that, so just to see if it's really gonna settle in. But the common or unclean, from what I'm seeing, common would be defiled or unholy, profane, which is defiled. To profane the Sabbath means to defile the Sabbath, and then unclean would be things that he was never supposed to eat. So common would be something that would have been like an animal that Yah did say to eat, say a cow, but then if it's strangled, it's now defiled, so it is now common. It's no longer clean. But unclean is just pork or an animal that you are never supposed to eat. Okay, I'm gonna just go ahead and state my point then, because that kind of does clarify. So it shows, like you're saying, verse 12, all manner of four-footed beasts, which would include clean and unclean, and then of course creeping things and birds as well. Stop. And then his response is, I've never eaten anything common that is common or unclean. I mean, how would he know what animals in the vision are defiled or are profane?
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm starting to see things that I didn't pay attention to, because when we get into this chapter, we go directly to eating.
I see it. 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 Okay. Yes. Yahuwah says, do not. It says, what is it? He says, what Yah has cleansed, what Yah has cleansed, that call not that common. So he's not talking about the unclean animals. He's specific about the animals that. Okay, and so here's the thing. He's looking at the animals. There's no way for him to know if they're unclean, if they're common or not, if they're defiled. He'd have to make an assumption that they are, and that's the issue with Cornelius. They've been taught to make an assumption that because they're not Jews, they're automatically common. So Yahuwah is showing him the difference. You know which ones are unclean, but don't call these common. If I've cleansed them, you don't know what's common. But it'd be a big difference if he said, don't call, if he says
the unclean animals.
Don't call the unclean what I have called clean. That'd be completely different, and then Christians would have a stance. But this specifically says don't call common, something that Yahuwah has made sanctified, and you're assuming it's defiled. You're assuming it's profane.
Now look at why they're assuming. They're assuming because both clean and unclean is being presented at the same time.
Together. Yeah.
So this is the same issue. This is the issue that Peter is going to have. Him being a person that's supposedly cleansed, and a person that's considered unclean or defiled by the nations, comment. And now he's saying, don't call, just because he's not considered the same as you, don't look at him as if he's defiled. Like, let's say two clean animals, two different species, but they still separated them. So it's interesting how it's just a different perspective as to why he used.
Yeah,
you see what I'm saying?
That gives it a lot more. Makes a lot more sense now. Why he would forget what I said earlier about him being hungry. That makes more sense. That is a great representation right there. Right. Which is again why he probably gave us clean and unclean food. You know. Dang, what was I gonna say? I forgot. I'll be back.
All right. So, one, the thing to keep in mind is that both clean and unclean animals, and at the same time, there's a lot of things that we're not understanding. Remember, these guys were taught by Pharisees and Sadducees. These guys were taught by Talmudic meaning like oral teachings. You see what I'm saying? So we don't know, and we only saw a few of the type of false teachings that the Pharisees have taught them, like what eating with unwashed hands would defile you. Matthew 15. If you ate food with unwashed hands, you were defiled. You know, there's probably a whole bunch of rules about defilement that Yahusha had to get out of their minds, had to remove from their thinking. You see what I'm saying? So now we're looking at, if you had a calf and a pig and they both were touching, imagine like what other oral teachings were probably taught to them, saying, oh, we got to keep even the animals separate from one another, or the clean animals will be defiled, or something along those lines. You see what I'm saying? So, and then I like the fact that he doesn't focus on, in verse 15, he doesn't focus on cleansing the unclean animals. He's focusing on cleansing what you're calling defiled. What you're calling defiled, you know, don't call defiled. I think it says that in another verse. Don't call defiled.
John, if I'm not mistaken, that when a Hebrew, or when a Yahudim or someone from a Hebrew would be either sent to another nation or choose whatever, if they go to another nation, that they would call them Gentile as well, wouldn't they?
They, like the Samaritans, not the Samaritans, but the Israelites that were mixed with the Assyrians. Yeah. They were considered unclean.
Gentiles. Yeah, but they call them Gentiles.
So they were considered unclean.
Well, check me out. Well, check me out, because it talks about, you know, don't call common what he has sanctified. But, you know, and just to be even more clear on that part, it's not saying that he's now sanctifying them, because if we go to, I think it's 1 Corinthians, when Paul's talking about food, and he's saying that whatever we eat, obviously talking about clean food, we should eat with thanksgiving, seeing that Yahuwah has sanctified it, and he sanctified it.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That's right. He sanctified it when he created it and told us that it was clean to eat. So it's not a matter of him sanctifying it in this vision, or even when Yahusha died, rose again. He sanctified it along with all the rest of the, you know, in the beginning. It was already sanctified. We're the ones calling it common or defiled.
Right. So it goes back to, I think you just mentioned it, about the is that Romans 14? No, it's not Romans 14. I think it is Corinthians, where eating the things offered to idols, where the clean, he said that they were saying that the clean animals that were offered to idols was unclean now, and Paul was saying the idol is nothing and the food is nothing. Like, they're both nothing. Like, okay, we could eat it, like it's fine. But if you think that it was offered to devils, you know, or to false gods, then we shouldn't touch it. You see what I'm saying? So there's this concept, like, we can't take what Yah made clean and then now declare it unclean. There's another verse that says that. I'm trying to remember that. It's not this one. It's not this one. It's specifically talking about something else. Anyway, I don't want to take too much time. So this is interesting, that there's some type of understanding. There's some type of understanding that if unclean and clean were in the same vicinity, that the clean animal would be defiled. So now you have Cornelius. He's a Roman. He's a Roman soldier. The Roman nation is unclean, if you wanna put it, idolatry, all of that stuff. But even though Cornelius is a Roman, he is cleansed. He's a clean person in the midst of unclean people. So Yah is saying, no, Cornelius is not considered unclean, nor is he considered common. I've cleansed him from him being common. Now he is clean. So now he would be considered like a clean. I don't want to go back to the vision. But anyway, Marshall, you had your hand up?
No, I actually clarified what I was going to ask. Yeah, you actually clarified what I was about to ask, the question I was about to ask, but you clarified it. I was like, okay, wait, are you guys talking about the division is about men, right? So
right.
You did clarify about,
Cornelius.
That's all I was going to ask. Yeah.
Right. But here's the excellent part about this. Most of the time, this is used to declare that the unclean animals have been made clean. And Mike brought out in verse 15 that what's being cleansed is not even an unclean animal. It's a defiled clean animal that's being cleansed. So it's interesting that many people would use these verses to declare that the unclean animal is now something that we can partake in and eat. Mike, you wanted to say something?
Just I'll ask this. Just if you can try to remind me after we're done the study, because I don't want to get distracted with this.
Okay. All right.
Just remind me if you can.
All right. So the vision came down 3 times to him, and verse 17 is very clear, right? Because we can't make a conclusion as to what Peter understood in these verses, because in verse 17 it clearly says that while Peter doubted in himself, meaning that Peter did not understand the vision at this time. At this moment, he did not understand this vision. So we're going to see that Peter will explain his own vision. He's going to explain to us the vision. So hopefully it lines up with everything we said, or everything we said is in the trash. So he doubted in himself what the vision which he had seen should mean. And then he sees these men that were sent by Cornelius to ask him, that stood by the gate and asked for him. And in verse 19, it says Peter thought on the vision, and the Spirit said to him. So now you have the Ruach speaking to him while he's thinking about this vision. The Ruach spoke to him and says, behold, 3 men look for you. And arise, therefore, and get you down and go with them, doubting nothing, for I have sent them. So now you have clarification. It's interesting that you have these men at the gate calling for him. And it says, let me read verse 17 and 18 straight. I think when we stop, it kind of disconnects the context of those verses. 17 and 18, it says, now while Peter doubted in himself what this vision which he had seen should mean, behold, the men which were sent from Cornelius had made inquiry for Simon's house and stood before the gate and called and asked whether Simon, which were surnamed Peter, were lodged there. While Peter thought on the vision, the Spirit came to him and said, behold, 3 men seek you. Arise, therefore, and get you down and go with them, doubting nothing, for I have sent them. I'm looking in my mind, what is the reason behind the Ruach having to tell him to go down? Remember, these are Roman soldiers just coming out of nowhere, coming to the house with Messiah believers who were so-called hiding from the authorities. Just a little context. They were hiding from the authorities. Roman soldiers pop up. Let's look at the scenario. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, the context that we have, the reason why I would say is because he wasn't sure. He still wasn't sure what the dream meant. He had the dream, but he wasn't sure what it meant. So I'm sure he still think at this point in time when they get there, he's probably still thinking of them as common, even though well, which is why I believe the Ruach had to tell him, go, because if the Ruach didn't tell that, I mean, the only thing we would be left to think is that he wouldn't have gone. So he must have still thought that they were common at that point. And I would say he did all the way up until well, we're going to get to it when he finally saw what happened with Cornelius. And then when he saw the outcome, then he probably looked back and was like, oh, this is why.
Right. No, that's exactly what happened. But let's go piece by piece.
Yes. Yeah.
That's exactly what happened. I like that piece. What I like to do is the Acts of the Apostles. This is history. This is like our history, right? We're looking at Acts of the Apostles like sometimes people look at it like it's a novel, like it's a story about a situation. This is actually historical accounts that occurred. You'll see that in the very beginning of this book. In the very beginning of this book, these are based off of eyewitness accounts of what was going on. So this is history. This is revealing to us the mindset of the people that were promoting, the body that we are walking in right now. You know what I mean? So this is very important that we grasp not only the beautiful understanding that they're giving to us, but also even the struggles that they had in their minds. We need to recognize the struggles that they had as well. So I don't believe he would have came. I believe he would have stayed up there if he didn't understand. But the Ruach had to tell him, go down because I sent them to you. And go down doubting nothing. There's a reason why the Ruach had to tell him that. Because he was doubting. He was like, I'm on the roof. I see these guys coming. I'm at Simon's house. They know I'm hiding. They're not gonna tell them who I am. You see what I'm saying? They're not gonna. Nobody's. One thing about these guys, nobody's snitching. You come asking for them, they're not giving them up to you. So you see Roman soldiers coming in. Ruach had to tell him, go down. I sent them to you. So he had to come down and reveal himself. Or Simon, the person's house that Peter was at, would have been like, nah, he's not here. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I'll point one more thing out. Also just showing how all of this, even in this right here, there's still aspects of Torah. We know it says that, on the witness of 2 or 3 establishes the matter. Yahuah had he gave him the vision 3 times and sent 3 people. I believe he sent 3 people as in 3 witnesses to the 3 visions that he had. So that's Torah still even there.
Yeah, in a sense. I thought you was going to say that the second witness was them receiving the Ruach. Because remember, he still didn't get it. He still didn't confirm it until I think you just mentioned.
Well, no, earlier. Yeah, I'm not saying that that's why he went. I believe he went just because the Ruach, like I said, told him. But I'm just saying he still had the vision 3 times, so that's still 3. I mean, it's not 3 different witnesses, but no, that's why. That's why I believe it was 3 people, because that's 3 witnesses. Because if you look at what they tell him, it's 3 people. Well, you'll see. But if you look at what they say,
yeah. No, I agree. I agree. I realize that the three people, the 3. So I'm gonna read verse. Unless does anybody want to read verse 21 to 30? All right, I'm gonna read verse 21 to 30.
I read.
All right, go ahead, brother.
21 to 30, right?
Yes.
So Kepha went down to the man who had been sent to him from Cornelius, and said, Look, I am the one you seek. Why have you come? And they said, Cornelius the captain, a righteous man and one who revered Elohim, and was spoken of by the entire nation of the Yahudim, was instructed by a Kodesh messenger to send for you to his house and to hear the words from you. So inviting them in, he housed them, and on the next day Kepha went away with them, and some brothers from Jaffa went with him. And the following day they entered into Caesarea, and Cornelius was waiting for them, having called together his relatives and close friends. And it came to be that when Kepha entered, Cornelius met him and fell down at his feet and bowed before him. But Kepha raised him up, saying, Stand up. I myself am also a man. And talking with him, he went in and found many who had come together. And he said to them, You know that a Yahudi is not allowed to associate with or go to one of another race. But Elohim has shown me that I should not call any man common, unclean. Hallelujah. That is why I came without hesitation when I was sent for. So I asked, Why have you sent for me? And Cornelius said, 4 days ago I was fasting until this hour. And at the 9th hour I prayed in my house, and see, a man stood before me in shining garments. Hallelujah. You said 30, right?
Hallelujah. No, yeah, that's it. Do you want to point out anything that you see?
This moment, not right now, but just go ahead.
Okay. All right. No, that's cool. So we see the unclean is involved in here. It's still as a distinction, common or unclean. I'm a wait before I put those pieces together. This is very interesting. Go ahead, Mike.
All right. So then now you can see the three witnesses I was talking about, because they came with a message from him about a vision he had from Yahuah, and there's three witnesses to confirm that same story. But I believe the reason why Paul now says common or unclean in verse 28 is because now he's speaking to the Yahudim who still see that. Because at the end of the day, what we have to take is, what did Yah say? Yah said not to call them common. He wasn't touching the unclean, because he doesn't want us to call anything he called unclean clean. He said don't call anything common, or don't call anything don't call those things common. So the reason why I think he's using common and unclean here is because he's understanding their mindset, because he literally just came from that same mindset of common or unclean. So
right. Every nation had a perspective of what was unclean or abominable. If you guys remember, when Moses was delivering the people of Israel, and they told him, Pharaoh was like, yeah, go ahead to the field right here and go sacrifice to Yah. And Moses was like, nah, like, we're not going to sacrifice here, because your people believe that it's abominable for us to sacrifice a lamb or a goat. And he said that they're going to stone us if we sacrifice here in Egypt. So even the Egyptians had a perspective of what was abominable, what was unclean, and things like that. This in verse 28, it says, you know how it is unlawful. Like, this is Cornelius. This is a Roman centurion. Why does the Roman centurion know that something is unclean? Does the Roman centurion know Torah? Because I want to see this in Torah. Where does it say this in Torah? Because it says that the foreigner was allowed even to eat off of your field. If the foreign, you were supposed to leave the edges of your field to let the foreigner or the other nations come and eat. So Where in Torah would it say that it's unlawful for a Yahudi or Jew to keep, or Yahudim to keep company with men of other nations? It doesn't say that.
Talmudi.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's not even that. But we, like I said before, there was a lot of things that their perspective was switching up. Like again, Matthew 15. Oh, if I eat with unwashed hands, I'm defiled. If I pick up the bed on the Sabbath, I'm breaking the Sabbath. A whole bunch of these things that's not even lawful.
Hallelujah.
It's not lawful to Yah, but it's unlawful to man. So right here, Kepha's coming out of this Talmudic leavened mindset. But
Praise Yah, Kefa.
Hallelujah. Yeah, it's funny because that's right. That's right, Rock. No, it's funny because Solomon had that idea, he had that understanding. That's one thing I love about Solomon, because he knew that he always mentioned about other nations coming to other places to worship in Jerusalem.
Right.
He always mentioned those. If there's a foreigner that was far off and fear the God of Israel, he let him come and face this place or this land. So he had an understanding of the Torah. So what I mean,
Right.
the thing is with Yahuwah, he always had because you look at if you look at the Roman centurion, he already received, he had faith. You know what I'm saying? That's all he needed. He had faith. He believed. So Yah is like, this man had faith. He believed in me. How can you call this man unclean or common, knowing that he already had believed in me? You already fear me. So of course, what you mentioned about Kepha, coming from that time, that Pharisaic mind and all that stuff that was already established in the land of Israel, because Israel was basically Pharisaic at the time. So he was coming out of that. So of course, I agree with that. So he had an understanding of that. So he needed to remove that. So Yah was showing them in that dream that, listen, you can't think like that. That's not who I am. That's not Torah. You know what I'm saying? So Yah was making that clear to him. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, Kepha. And with you saying that, it just made me realize, like, we came out of confusion.
Of course.
So if Kepha could come out of confusion, not only come out, receive the Ruach, baptize thousands of people, heal, do miracles, and still could have some incorrect understanding in his mind, we ought to look at ourselves the same way. It's possible that we can have an incorrect view, but that's why we're studying together. So that way we can all talk to one another and glean and grow together. And we're not relying on Pharisees. We're not relying on our past understanding. We're relying on what the Ruach reveals at this time. You see what I'm saying? So we ought to think like, we ought to learn from this. If Peter can be filled with the Ruach doing all these works and healings and preaching, and still have that wrong mindset, we need to be careful with what type of mindset we are holding on to or declaring is above someone else's. You know what I mean? Go ahead, Marshall. Are you there?
Hallelujah. Thank you, brother, for that last statement. I saw how Yahuwah's plan is for his salvation to be known unto the ends of the earth, and like Psalm 117:1 says, "Hallelujah, praise Yahuwah, all you nations, worship Him, all you peoples." Other versions say like heathen, all you heathens. You know how He literally goes to the ends of the earth and bring forth His people. And the whole thing about the psych about the nations being unclean when you hang out with people of other nations, but yet again, Yahusha has sent us to the end of the world. So even Peter was standing there, but he still had that mindset without even knowing. He said that he still said it's unlawful thing, when it's nowhere in the Torah. But then Yahuwah is leading him through his true doctrine of saying that, but the Father showed me, that I should not call any man clean or unclean. So like even that growing up in it, it was just like natural to him to think that it was lawful because it was more of a moral law because these people didn't go to school. But then but the Yahuwah now is leading him through that narrow, straight path, you know, of understanding that his salvation is to spring forth from the ends of the earth. You know, like all nations will know his goodness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me read a verse from Prophet Isaiah chapter 56. In verse 3, it says, neither let the son of the foreigner, neither let. So it starts out by saying neither let, meaning like do not let the son of the foreigner that has joined himself to Yahuwah speak, saying, Yah has utterly separated me from his people. You see that? He said, do not let them say that. Do not let them say that they are separated from his people. You see that? And then it says here, let's see, verse 6. Also, the sons of the foreigner or sons of the nations that join themselves to Yah to serve him and to love the name of Yah, to be his servants, everyone that keeps the Shabbat from polluting it and take hold of my covenant, even them. Who's them? The sons of the foreigners, the nations. Even them will I bring to my set apart mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Remember, Cornelius was praying as a memorial. And their burnt offerings and their sacrifices shall be accepted upon my altar. For my house shall be called a house of prayer for, like you said, Marshall, for all people. For all people. And verse 8 says, and Yahuwah Elohim, which gathers the outcasts of Israel, saith, yet will I gather others to him, beside those that are gathered to him. So even though I'm going to gather the outcasts of Israel, or the lost sheep of Israel, I will gather others beside those. And we see that happening right now in the book of Acts, for us to get a clear view of this good news, of this beautiful message that's going out to the ends of the earth, like what Marshall was bringing up. So looking at these things, verse 28, he clearly sees, because remember, Peter is about to go keep company with people from another nation. And that's another proof that Cornelius was from another nation, by the way. So he's going to go keep company with them, and he says, you heard about this separation, you heard about this law, but Yah showed me something else. You see, this is not in Torah. Torah didn't say this. Yah showed me this, which is contrary to what the men or the leaders or the teachers of Jerusalem at that time taught. So this is really good. This is really good. Let me read verse 29 and 30. It says, therefore came I unto you without gainsaying. As soon as I was sent for, I asked therefore what was the intent that you have sent for me. And verse 30 says, and Cornelius said, 4 days ago I was fasting until this hour. At the 9th hour, that's the hour of prayer, I prayed in my house, and behold, a man stood before me in bright clothes. And now he's about to go over. So Mike was mentioning how when he was walking to Cornelius, he asked the three men, which according to Torah, 2 or 3 witnesses will establish the matter. So on the way to Cornelius, he asked the 3 men what's going on, and they told him the same story, which confirmed as witnesses what was going on in Cornelius' house. So that was a good catch, Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
Just want to bring out too, because we are talking about uncommon, so someone that Yah has sanctified. I believe that there's still the unclean animals in the vision, because there are actually unclean people. So it's not the fact that it's not saying that no one is unclean. It's just saying don't call common what I have sanctified. Because if we go to 2 John verse 10 and 11, it says, if there come any unto you and bring not this doctrine, receive him not into your house, neither bid him Godspeed. For he that biddeth him Godspeed is a partaker of his evil deeds. So I would call that someone unclean, that we should not have fellowship with. We should not be, fellowshipping with. We shouldn't be connecting ourselves with. But then on the other hand, someone who is well, I'm not gonna say common, but someone who we would look as common. I guess technically you should be you should look at everybody as common, but we should be looking at everybody's fruits, because at the end of the day, that's how we're gonna know if they are clean or unclean. Which is
And
even what we have to do with our food. I mean, because all the animals that are alive aren't written in scriptures. So what we do is we look at the fruits or the principles of the animals that he tells us are clean, and then we can match those up to other animals that aren't listed. And I think it's the same thing with people.
I think that there's also a characteristic behind it. Like you have a common is something that was clean and then became defiled. So you have that aspect of someone who is clean and then became defiled. Like if a person is in sin after they've been cleansed, they would be considered defiled, or they have profaned. But I believe also that because we're born in sin, that initially we are unclean initially until we come to him. So when we come to him, we become cleansed, and then when we sin after that, we become defiled. So I think those two terms, based off of how the Torah uses it, is being used accurate. Like 2 Corinthians chapter 6, where it says, "Be not unequally yoked." This is verse 14 of 2 Corinthians 6. "Be not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. What fellowship have righteousness with unrighteousness? What communion has light with darkness?" Now remember, unbelievers, believers, demons, so it's talking about the far end. It's not talking about those who are. So verse 16, it says, "What agreement the temple of Elohim with idols? You are the temple of the living Elohim, or the Elohim of the living. As Elohim have said, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. Wherefore, come out from among them, come out from among the unclean nations, be ye separate, saith the master, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you." So this is referring to individuals coming out of the nations, coming out of the unclean ways of living, and coming into righteousness. Now, after you turn from righteousness, you become defiled. You become, in a sense, unclean. But I believe that a defiled unclean is different from a natural unclean, because you can't clean an idol. Like you can't clean an idol. You can't clean an unbeliever. You have to transform an unbeliever. You have to destroy the idol. So anyway. That's too much details. Going too technical with words, but there's an idea difference between something that's defiled or profane and something that was always unclean. I think Mike mentioned that already. All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. So where do we read from? We read to 30, right?
38.
All right. Does somebody want to read verse 31 to 40? All right, Marshall, go ahead.
Thank you. 41. He said,
31 to 40.
Perfect. "And said Cornelius, your prayer is heard, and your gifts to the needy are remembered in the sight of Yah. Send therefore to Yaffo and summon Shimon, who is surnamed Rock. He lodges in the house of Shimon the tanner by the seaside. When he comes, he will speak to you. Therefore I sent to you at once, and it was good of you to come. Now, therefore, we are all here present in the sight of Yah to hear all things that have been commanded you by Yah." Rock opened his mouth and said, "Truly I perceive that Yah doesn't show favoritism, but in every nation he who fears him and works righteousness is acceptable to him. The word which he sent to the children of Israel, preaching good news and of Shalom, of Yeshua, by Yeshua the Messiah, he is master of all. That spoken word you yourselves know, which was proclaimed throughout all Yehudah, beginning from the Galilee, after the immersion which Yachanan preached. Even Yeshua of Nazareth, how Yah anointed him with the Ruach HaKodesh and with power, who went about doing good and healing all who were oppressed by the devil, for Yah was with him. We are witnesses of everything he did, both in the country of the Yehudim and in Jerusalem, whom they also killed, hanging him on the tree. Yah raised him up the third day and gave him to be revealed, not to all the people, but to witnesses who were chosen before by Yah, to us, who ate and drank with him after he rose from the dead. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, right? So we see the good news being preached. Do you have something to bring out, Marshall?
Like how he said, verse 42, it says, he charged us to preach to the people and testify that this is he. No, that's not the passage.
Verse 41?
Yeah, 41. Not to all the people, but to witnesses who were chosen before by Yah, to us. And then he says, to us who ate and drank with him. So I felt like the sheet coming down from the heavens were also like a show of these people who were actually in that sheet was already the ones who were preordained to work righteousness or to believe in Mashiach. And they were the ones that were made clean, that by the Father. And
right.
And even how Mashiach said, I pray not for the world, but to those you gave me. So those the Father gave him from all nations. They were, I believe, the ones that were, preordained to hear the message and receive it. But I love this whole passage. I gotta go through it.
Yeah. Because remember, it says many are called, few are chosen. There's a correlation between being called and chosen.
Yes.
Many are called, but in a sense, few will answer. We know that he doesn't call many for no reason. He calls many because he's extending this to all the nations. I think that's one of the biggest milestones. I know right now we're in this mindset of normality, like where it's normal that this is spreading and everybody talks about this going all over the world. But this is a milestone at this point. Kefa is seeing from verse 34. He's seeing that he's seeing the reality of what it means to not be a respecter of persons. And this kind of connects with what Isaiah said in Isaiah chapter 56, where it says everyone who is willing to come to Yah will be accepted. All right. Anybody wanted to point out anything? Go ahead, Marshall.
You see what you just said? Everybody who will come to Yah will be accepted. And I thought about also that sheet. We could also be the sinners who are saved by grace. Like for instance, the prostitute, how they were about to condemn her, but Mashiach said, "Go and sin no more." So like probably 2 or 3 days later, somebody who had slept with her before would still think that she's the same, but she's no longer the same. So how I just see, like everybody who will come to the Father, he would accept them. If you go to him asking him for mercy, he will. After all, he sits on the seat of mercy. So
absolutely.
He will show
no,
mercy.
Absolutely. And everyone, even in our own lives, like how many people we know after coming to Yah, when we come in contact with them, they still think that we're the same unclean type of person or the same profane and defiled person that we were before. Sometimes, I have conversations with my brothers, and sometimes they bring up, me lying. They try to give me the same attributes that I had when I was younger, and can't do that. We can't do that. That's why Peter, I like that Peter mentioned that he should not call any man, but like what Mike said, at this point in time, we got to see the fruit. We got to wait until we see the fruit. We can't declare anything on a man. We got to see how they respond. Even sometimes their words are not even a witness against. Well, y'all said that our idle words will be used as witnesses against us, but you guys know what I mean. Like Paul made many declarations against the believers of Messiah, and look at what he is now. Look at what his life is now. And many other, even centurion. Look, he's a Roman soldier. How many people from the time of Messiah to this point did he have to arrest? Did he have to throw in jail? You know what I mean? So we see even our words, once Yah has cleansed us, those things do not apply to us anymore.
Hallelujah.
Do not attribute to.
Yeah.
2 Corinthians chapter 5 verse 17. If you are in Messiah, then you are a new creature. All old things are passed away, and all things have become new. Like this is the key. You was gonna say something, Brother Kev?
Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of Yahuwah, man. What's up, please? I mean, just to know that, I mean, he gave us that grace and mercy, man, to be able to, we go through the things of the world and come back to him, and he's like, you know what, that's done. It's amazing because I met a guy, that, the other day that at my job, and he had a drug, he came from a drug dealing past, and he's like, yo, Kefa, man, I want to get together with you. I want to study the Bible with you. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I'm with you. I'm willing to let that go. That's the past. But the Most High is working in his heart right now. You know what I'm saying? He's transforming little by little, you know what I'm saying? Because he's like, yo, I believe in the Messiah. I want to change my life. You understand what I'm saying to you? So it's amazing how Yah allows us to go through what we go through and to be able to be like, you know what? It's my time now. You know what I'm saying? And it's, he doesn't look at things of, the way man see things when we like, yo, he was doing this. But Yah is like, you know what? I got something in plan for you. So,
Right.
So pray for him. His name is Otis, you know what I'm saying? So it's an amazing thing that Yah is using me to be able to, get to him to understand more about the word of Yahuwah. So praise Yah for that, man.
Praise Yah.
For his mercy.
Praise Yah, definitely. His mercy. His mercy and his grace and his compassion does not measure up. That's why even David said, I don't want to fall into the hands of man.
Hallelujah.
I'd rather fall. And it says it's a fearful thing to fall in the hands of Yah. But he says, I rather fall in the hands of Yah. I rather him pour out his wrath without mixture than deal with man's wrath. That's a statement. That's a big statement to the character of Yah and how he deals with us. This is excellent perspective of Peter's growth and our growth as well. I hope we apply this in our perspective when we're looking at different people and just label people uncommon, or label people common and label people defiled and label people unclean and label people. We need to be able to refrain from that and deal with the fruit. Like if somebody is doing something, you see the fruit, now it's not labeling them, it's correcting them. You see what I'm saying? So he tells us to correct people. And even Peter's like, Yah's not a respecter of persons. He's not going to look at this person's wrong in this area and favor you who is wrong in another area. He's not going to do that. So, man, we see him giving the good news. I'm gonna start from verse 40 and read all the way down. So verse 40 says, him Elohim raised up the third day and showed him openly, not to all the people, but to the witnesses chosen before Elohim, even to us, referring to the 12, who did eat and drink with him after he rose from the dead. So he's giving you more context. And he commanded us to preach unto the people and to testify that it is he that was ordained of Elohim, and to be the judge of the living and the dead. To him give all the prophets witness that through his name whosoever believeth in him shall receive the removal of sins. Whosoever. It says, while Kepha yet spake these words, the Ruach HaKodesh fell on all of them that heard the word, and they of the circumcision which believed were astonished. Obviously, Kepha came there with some Yahudim. And it says, as many as came with Peter, because that on the nations also was poured out, it says the Gentiles, it says the nations, was poured out the gift of the Ruach HaKodesh. Hallelujah. For they heard them speak with tongues or languages and magnify Elohim, meaning that they understood that they were magnifying Yah by the language that they spoke. Then answered Peter, can any man forbid water that these should not be baptized or immersed, which have received the Ruach HaKodesh as well as we? So he's saying that they received it just like how he received it. And he commanded them to be baptized. You notice that he's commanding them to be baptized. I know many have these questions of whether or not people should get baptized. We notice verse 48, he sees the evidence of the Ruach. And he sees the evidence that they're following Yah. And he's commanding them, just like how Yahusha commanded us, to be immersed in the name of the Master Yahusha. Then he prayed, prayed they him to tarry. Then they asked him to tarry for a few days. So this is a milestone. You have the circumcision in verse 45 referring to those who were naturally Yahudims. And then they're seeing the Ruach pour on the Gentiles, specifically a nation that they refer to as unclean, or Romans. This is a different type of thing. This is not like an Assyrian. This is not an Assyrian mixed with an Israelite. This is a straight Roman, you know. And to see them receive the Ruach and demonstrate that power to speak. Like imagine a Roman speaking in a different language, magnifying Yah in a different language, you know what I mean? And perhaps, because I know that Kepha already spoke in tongues. So if Cornelius was Roman, his language was most likely Latin. He probably did understand, but his language was Latin primarily. Yeah. So Peter speaking to him would probably spoke to him in Latin. And it says here that he spoke in different languages. So imagine he probably would have spoke in Peter's language, which is what made them so, you know, speaking in Hebrew, making the Yahudim like, oh, snap, like this Roman is speaking fluent Hebrew right now. You know what I mean? So I'm just painting a picture as to the scene as what might have happened to surprise the circumcision so much. But yeah, this is a clear view. The vision was not talking about food; it was talking about man. And I love the detail of this dream of having both clean and unclean animals put together. That changes this whole dynamic of people using this to try to prove that you can eat unclean animals. It changes it. It's like it's impossible. You cannot use this chapter no more. You know, so this was a good study. This was a good study. Anybody want to say any last words before I close?
I mean, this definitely stops the understanding of, I know you heard it before when I used to hear from the Israelites that Cornelius was an Israelite.
Yeah.
And that's so far from the truth, man. You know what I'm saying? It's like they always try to find some type of excuse. And nah, these were Israelites that were scattered and that. And nah, man, this is clear. You know what I'm saying? That, you know, Yah is always, you're always calling those who, you know what I'm saying, from other nations to repent. And you know, once you have faith, man. So, I mean, I just want to read it again, man. I want to read it again.
Yeah, go ahead.
Verse 35. But in every nation who reveres him and works righteousness and is sent by him. He sent the word to the children of Israel, bringing the good news. Peace through Yahusha HaMashiach is adorned of all. You know what word came to be throughout all Yahuah, beginning from Galiot after the immersion which Yohanan proclaimed. Now Yahuwah anointed Yahusha of Nazareth with the Ruach HaKodesh and with power, who went about doing good and healing of all who were oppressed by the devil, or Yahuwah was with him. So basically, I mean, I love reading that because it's clear, the power of Yah and those who fear Yahuwah and wants to come back to, to the true Elohim. And he's like, yo, listen, as long as you believe, man, and as long as you have faith, you come to me, you are considered righteous. You know what I'm saying? So, but yet you look at all the things that's happening, even though all the things that's happening in Israel, his chosen people, Yah is like, you know what? I'm trying to help you to understand that it's a lot more bigger than you. It's a lot more bigger. I have a bigger plan. I have other people outside. Even when Yahusha spoke about the sheep in the fold, I got others outside of the fold that I want to bring into the fold. You know what I'm saying? So it's a beautiful thing, man. It's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. 100% agree, Kev. Absolutely. It's bigger than just been, my wife was mentioning Yahuwah mentioning, I wish no man perish, but that all. And I see how they try to distort that to show exclusivity. It's just the same spirit most organizations have, like we. Every organization that exists ends up at one point when they're moved away from Yahuwah, they end up at one point talking about we. We are this, we are that, rather than pounding their chest saying, I'm a sinner, save me. You see what I'm saying? Even Yahusha made those two distinctions of one saying, look at me, and the other one with his head down, pounding his chest saying, I'm a sinner, have mercy on me. You see the difference? There's a different characteristic of those who are of Yah. We're not going to say us, us, us. We're going to say Yah, 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 and his son. We're going to be pointing to them and glorifying them and lifting them up. We're not going to be trying to lift up our particular group or our particular race connected by blood or whatever it is. Moshe was the meekest of all the earth. You know what I mean? You show me in Moshe where he was a respecter of persons in any way. Like he was clear. Blessings, cursings, you choose. You didn't choose just because you were related.
Yeah, we got people boasting and choosing the wrong thing.
Yeah,
Deuteronomy 28. Like
wow.
Even though they're acknowledging the curse, they're still taking pride that that's them. Like, it's the same thing, that Yahusha said to the scribes and Pharisees as they were claiming, the flesh and blood, the ones who were killing the prophets as their fathers, and he said. He's pretty much like, you guys are condemning yourselves. You claim those are your fathers, then you are partakers in their sins. Like, you shouldn't be claiming them as your father. You should be.
Yeah, no, yeah. And especially when they be like, oh, when they try to put nationality behind a tribe, and they be like, oh, Jamaicans are the tribe of Benjamin, and I'm just,
tribe of Judah.
I'm not messing with Benjamin, man. I don't care if my father's Jamaican. I'm not messing with Benjamin, man. You see, they did some crazy things. I'm not associated like, oh yeah, I'm a bloodline. No, I don't want those things passed down to me. It's passed down by blood. It's just a matter of what you're taking pride in. Are you taking pride in your identity with Yah? Are you a son of Yah? Are you taking pride in the fact that you're cursed? Which one? But anyway, this is absolutely no way that in this chapter you can still think that Cornelius was in some way a Yahudim. Absolutely not. And that the nations is referring to dispersed Israelites within nations. It just doesn't make sense. It would make those verses from the prophets that we just read in Isaiah 56 and different things like that, the verses that Marshall read, it would make it confusing, to talk about the nations, to talk about the nations being brought in, so. Mike, you have something to mention?
After the recording.
You sure, Mike?
After the recording.
I will do that, Mike.
All right. So this is a conclusion. Acts chapter 10. Shalom.